People, when they think of just the word anarchism, they think of like something like a subculture, like, you know, like I mean, furries is kind of a random example, but you know, like
There's some anarchist furries, you know.
yeah, but I just mean like
broad,
they think of it as like a hobby subculture of like, this is like a style. Oh, I wear the belt and the studded jacket. They don't think of it as an actual serious political ideology. And
Yeah.
I wanted to like get into, because in my opinion, I think anarchism is actually infinitely more, it has infinitely more potential to bring about an actual desirable society to live in compared to communism, because communism's track record, and I guess you can say, oh, it's Marxist Lenin. I'm not a Marxist Leninist.
Well,
I'm a esoteric libertarian, this, that, like,
yeah,
yeah.
has actual communism ever been tried in the same form as, like, has actual capitalism ever been tried? Has actual anarchism ever been tried? And that's the one that you can kind of say, yeah, because it is a very broad set of values that is outside of the mainstream way of doing things, like the main hierarchical way of doing things. So, like, you can say that, yeah, anarchism has been tried in the way that, like, there are many food not bombs chapters all over America and worldwide, I believe, where they will redistribute goods in a non-hierarchical form where like people, like, this is just an example from the one that I've worked with, like this woman that was managing a grocery store down in Wilmington had a bunch of like unsellable food where, like, and it was totally fine. It was like canned goods and stuff like that. And it's like kind of at your own discretion if you want to eat this. So I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll pick it up. And then I take time out of my day and I go and grab that stuff, bring it to the distribution center that some of the other anarchists have down there. And then they take it out, and then I'll meet them up at like the park that we all gather at to like distribute this food. And had this, and the state being involved would have restricted that food from getting places, and there's merit to that, obviously.
Is that where they talk about like where if the food is like past this Best By date, they throw it out and they don't let the employees take it home? Like, they're like, no, you have to throw it in the trash.
Yeah, because
that shit's stupid. Yeah.
And the reason that they do that is because if they were to give that stuff out for free, they believe that people would just wait for the expiry date to come and come and get it for free, and that would depress the prices of the food, and that would reduce the profit that is available to the people who sell it.
There's a twisted logic to that.
It is. And where like anarchists would just be like, well, the food exists and the people are hungry. Let's just do it. And so in that, like, because anarchism is so free form, so like open to just like, well, yeah, if you want to do it, I'm not going to stand in your way unless it's starting to cause problems. So then you can just say like, yeah, it's been tried, and like the reason that it isn't successful is the reason that like is because of how we measure what success is. You know what I mean? Like, success to a normal, like in our normal sort of range of doing things is you gain more power over, like, you know, people at your job. Instead of being an employee, you become a manager, or you gather more resources under your control. Instead of being a worker, you become a capitalist.
That's a very like, I was thinking on a much simpler level than that. Like, I mean, that could be maybe according to the capitalist structure, like that is a measure of success. People are like, yeah, I do want all my minions working for me in my giant factory or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, I was just thinking clean streets, like women can walk the street at night and not be afraid of getting fucking raped. Yeah. I'm talking about like no use heroin needles on the street, playgrounds where children can go play, like schools. I mean, I'm with the socialists. We should definitely invest more in schooling and stuff on that. Like, But
Well,
the thing is,
yeah.
you do need a degree, and this is like probably where we will disagree, and we can get to that later. But my belief is you do need a degree of like structure and like coercion to like stop this tiny minority of degenerate people, but like
Mhm.
they are, and like
So the people that are non-social or antisocial
antisocial, yeah.
is what like the term I've been hearing thrown around
Hmm.
more recently. But that a lot of anarchists would say that they are prevented from doing such things. Like there was a guy that in LA that like there was this hill that if you that you had to go like way around to go up it, or you'd have to like crawl up this like hillside, and people were trying to do that, and so he installed a set of stairs, which like in an anarchist society would be like, yeah, fuck it, go ahead. And in this society they had to tear it down because it wasn't compliant with so many different rules
Hmm.
and all of that. And that's just like a small silly example, but like an anarchist would say like if you want the clean streets, then go clean them.
Yeah. But
And
like who's gonna voluntarily do that like
a
with
lot of
no.
anarchists would like that's what I'm trying the point I'm trying to make is like
I feel like in a community where everyone like knows each other and cares about each other, that
yeah.
could definitely work. But that's like the Dunbar's number. You need like 150 people for that. When you scale up to like a society of millions of people,
Mhm.
I am highly skeptical of the idea that people like there would be enough volunteers to do. But we will get to that because that
Yeah,
is
yeah.
part of the section where we will have a discussion about this. I
Okay.
do have some things in my. Sorry, I was reading Leon Trotsky before you got here. So this is the first question. How would
Okay.
you personally define anarchism, and what misconceptions about it frustrate you the most?
I like kind of what I've been saying.
Hmm.
Anarchism is that political philosophy of just like go out if you think that there needs to be a change in the world, go out and try it. And if people are on board with it, they will go with you.
Hmm.
And or go out and ask your friends. Like that's how like a lot of Food Not Bombs chapters start, is that like I think that it's bad that people are starving on the streets. I'm gonna go ask around, and if anybody has food, I'm gonna take it to them. And
Hmm.
like if more and more people start to coalesce around that, and to your point of like a society with millions of people isn't going to be able to cohese
Hmm.
like that, but small societies within the society, like small groups of people in the city of Long Beach, that's like some hundreds of thousands of people,
Hmm.
go out there and serve their community because that's what they feel like they should be doing. And that's not everybody,
Hmm.
obviously. And there are people, especially like the state and the police, that are antagonistic to it, but
Antagonistic to what?
to the anarchist projects of like where we would just be like, well, yeah, people living on the street sucks, but it sucks worse for you to go through and throw away all of their stuff, like through what people call sweeps and things like that, where like the cops come and just grab their shit and throw it away.
Hmm.
And there's a big famous example of that, of Gavin Newsom doing that like sometime last year, going out and literally just picking up homeless people's stuff, the only stuff that they have.
Was that when the Chinese government was coming into town?
I don't know. He was like frustrated that because he did like start a state fund that the cities had access to like start building more infrastructure, building more housing, and getting people off of the streets. And the cities were kind of lagging behind,
Hmm.
or to his taste, or to his like understanding. And so he, to press them to do that, he did a campaign of like going through and like throwing away people's shit, and like it was just kind of disgusting. I have my problems with Gavin Newsom, but whatever. We need a liberal Trump. But so that's one of the things that I like to highlight about anarchism. One of the things that's frustrating about how people view it is like, how people are like, well, Antifa's a terrorist group. Okay, explain that. What is Antifa? It, who in Antifa are we targeting? Because like what the structure is just completely different than how we structure things in our normal society, which is like there's the boss, there's the manager, the president of the organization, and then they like tell people what to do. And so you have a person that's like, okay, this is the ringleader, this is the guy that is in control,
Mhm.
and we need to either talk to them and convince them not to do that anymore, or make it problematic for like anybody to join up with that group, blah blah blah. Whereas like anarchist ideology or anarchist thinking, anarchist grouping is flat.
Spontaneous.
It's spontaneous. It's a bunch of friends going out and being like, let's feed the homeless, or let's, cause problems for the police,
Hmm.
or and one of the best cases of that is the Stop Cop City movement, where yeah, there was a lot of organizing and there were like leaders in that organizing in that they like took the charge of like, I'm gonna print flyers, I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna ask people to come. But like there was nobody really in charge.
Mhm.
And so when now more recently they're like going through like all of the RICO cases and stuff like that. And I think and I wrote about this on a blog that I had a while like back then. But how do you prosecute that? Do you just get everybody that was there like do you what's it called, not group punish but like group, do you just punish the group as a whole, or do you pick out individuals and take up so much court time with all of those individuals?
Yeah.
Do you try to figure out who specifically was throwing the Molotov cocktails and who was like distributing the food? Do you punish them differently? Whatever. But the thing is that the state doesn't want those people to stop Cop City, so they just kind of blanket.
So you think the government's actively campaigning to like keep any anarchist attempts to create a society like down?
Not necessarily, because like if you're just out there distributing food, the cops will probably come by and be like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And then you be, and be nice to them. Don't
Mhm.
like say fuck pigs and
Mhm.
like tell them to fuck off. You just say like, "Oh, we're distributing food."
Mhm.
But there are places in the United States that are antagonistic to it. Like there's a famous case in I forgot what city in Texas, but they were getting fines. Like the cops were fining people for
Mhm.
doing this food not bomb sort of
And
distribution.
that's because of like there's gonna be some
Mhm.
stupid little code here that's like, oh,
Yeah.
according to this code, you're not allowed. And the cops are really they're like the immune system just regulating
Mhm.
whatever they're ordered to regulate.
Yeah.
So like I get that that can be annoying sometimes, but like let's say okay, are the Amish anarchist? Do they count as anarchist?
I'm not sure what they're like because they're I wouldn't say so just because from what I know of them, and I could be completely wrong,
Mm,
but I do believe that they have a sort of like hierarchy of gender where like the man is the man of the household.
mhm,
They are in sort of authority over their daughters and wives and stuff like that, where anarchism would try to pull you away from that.
mhm. So anarchism is not really compatible with religion then, huh?
Not necessarily, but like there's a lot of, and Jesus is a lot of things. Jesus is whatever you kind of want him to be, but like there is some like
But
anarchy.
most religions, Abrahamic or not, they have like
Mhm.
a patriarchal structure too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And what if, and here's the thing, there's some women who want to live in a traditional patriarchal structure. So let's say there's a commune of some people who want to live according to that way, like, why should you stop them, you know?
Well, that's the other thing about it. That's one of the things about anarchism that's
Mhm.
kind of lost in its comparison to other groups of people or groups of movements, where like it would be like, yeah, fucking whatever.
Mhm.
If you're like, we're not gonna like go and like stop you from doing that,
Mhm.
but we are going to accept the people that are having a problem with it, like the women who don't necessarily want to live that way and try to get out of it.
So free association is
Mhm.
important.
Yeah.
If you have free association and there's some women who are like, I'm a good Christian, I want to live in accordance with God's law,
Hmm.
and they want to go there, you can't be like, hey, you're oppressing yourself. You need to be a strong, independent woman.
And some anarchists, some people like involved with the movement would generally do that, but it is
Because
like
then that's not really libertarian. That's kind of you need to abide by my value
that's more of
system. Yeah.
authoritarianism. And if we're the no true Scotsman
Mhm.
fallacy, I'd say like, well, they're not a true
Mhm.
anarchist, but there is a lot of that in like the certain groups that like form because that is just like a human thing to do. But the thing about like anarchist movements and anarchist groups is kind of just like, well, you like somebody like is like, well, those women are being oppressed, we should go do something
Hmm.
about it. They would have to get, convince other people to go with them or go by themselves.
Hmm.
And how would you do that if like a bunch of the group, a bunch of people in your group are like, ah, it's fine. Like it,
What if
it
they agreed with you?
well, yeah, and then that's another thing. That's another fun thing that like a lot of people try to point towards anarchism is warlordism,
Hmm.
where
That's actually
yeah,
exactly what I was going to lead into is like what's stopping it from just turning into Somalia or like
yeah, yeah.
similar. Yeah.
And the good grace of good people, I
Mm.
guess, but like obviously that's not
That's doing a lot of heavy lifting. Yeah.
exactly. That's not a it's not a thing. And that's why anarchism is never going to be successful, but it is always going to it is a thing that always kind of just needs to be around
Mm,
and is kind of always around,
mm,
where like what I was going back to what I was talking about with Jesus was like there is some scholarship of the early Christian church that it was like a movement of sort of a food not bombs kind of movement
mm,
where they would gather donations and food and clothing and stuff and donate them and distribute them to the lowest of the society, which
mm,
like at that in that society was like divorced women who sort of lost their whole support structure because in the Roman era, that's being married or whatever, that's how you, as a woman, were able to get your support.
mm,
And so if you were divorced, you're just shit out of luck. You just
mm.
have nothing. So there's also a lot of scholarship that a lot that the early Christian church was financially supported by not divorced. What's the word? Your husband died.
Widow.
Widowed women, because if you're widowed, you get all of your husband's money and stuff. And they saw that and were like, using this movement to kind of aid a problem that they saw in society. So then, and the Roman church had its the Roman society had an incredibly hierarchical order. And a lot of
Mm.
people weren't
It's
very
like
happy with it.
quasi-fascist. I mean, that's where
Yeah.
fascism comes from,
Well,
the
yeah, yeah,
fasces.
yeah.
Yeah.
They did definitely inspire a lot of fascist movement.
Mhm,
And like, we can talk about that, but like, they and in Germany at the time of fascism, there
mhm.
was a lot of anarchist movements in the Russian Revolution. Like, yeah, I mean, hell yeah, communism way better than monarchism that they were dealing with at the time.
De- we can debate that later.
Well, my main contention is that like Alexander the Second, the last of the Romanovs or the last of the czars, was ruining the country, was harming the people of the lower classes. And when you have monarchism or dictatorship or CEO ownership of a company or whatever, there is always a huge chance that person sitting in that chair of power is a total fucking idiot.
Mhm,
And when you look at that era of Russian history, you'll see like a lot of people were starving, a lot of people
mhm.
were not getting the resources that they needed when the resources existed and just were not being distributed correctly.
My contention would be that like in the case of the czarist regime, it was more on the part of incompetence, whereas like when the communists took over, they knew what was going on, but they were like maliciously denying food to this group because they're acting uppity, so let's starve
Yeah.
them. Like,
And that was a lot of the time being targeted towards anarchist groups
mhm,
or that kind of thing
mhm,
because they demanded cohesion, like because they were
mhm.
authoritarian, or you would place the authoritarian label on them looking at back or as a sign
I think
looking
even
back
they
at
would
history.
call themselves
Yeah,
authoritarian.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, of course. And we'll get into Nestor Makhta no now
Mhm,
because like his major contention was that like, well, these people need like the resources. I don't know why you're turning on us. I don't know what's going on.
mhm,
But also like your centralization of your central like because Lenin wanted everything centralized because he was an authoritarian,
mhm,
because that makes it easier for you to be authoritative. You have control over how things are distributed.
mhm,
The white army, I believe, or the capitalist funded part of the Civil War
mhm.
was able to like they knew exactly where the trains were going because the trains were only going from one place.
Mhm.
So they could stop where the trains were going by going and blowing up certain tracks and whatnot and that kind of thing. And Nestor Makhno was like, when he had a meeting with Lenin, he was like, yeah, your central distribution of resources is your downfall.
Mhm.
And Lenin was like, fuck you. And Nestor's sort of like free association, like, and democratic distribution of resources. And, he didn't really have trains. He had,
Shankas.
yeah, he had horse-drawn machine guns and whatnot, which are much more easily, distributed throughout
It was
different
really an
places.
ingenious idea.
Oh, he
Like
was
I
fucking, dude,
respect his like
he was,
ingenuity.
whoever's listening to this, and you especially, if you want to find some cool history, look into Nestor
Mhm.
Makhno. He was fucking awesome.
But
Yeah,
in my opinion, Nestor Makhno is almost like a monarchical because by the end of the movement, like his people were almost worshiping him. They're like, we
yeah,
will follow you into fire and back. And he became like, that's why I feel like even when you start off all equal, like the people will like almost self-select their messiah. Like they'll
yeah.
be like, this is our
Well,
messiah.
there's nothing, and again, there's nothing that you can do about human
Hmm.
nature. That's just
Hmm.
kind of what people do. But again, anarchism is like there is the ability to question that, the ability to, whereas in communism, you don't really question Lenin, you don't really question Stalin.
That actually leads to a good question. Like, what's the difference between like the anarchist understanding of history and societal structure versus a Marxist understanding? Where do they diverge?
You'd have to ask somebody smarter than me, but I can
It's all
take a stab at it. So, and I don't think Howard Zinn was necessarily an anarchist. He was more like probably liberal, what you'd call a liberal or whatever.
He's a
But
commie, I thought.
well, there's a lot of people who think that, but they're not. There's a lot of people who also thought Obama was a communist and Biden was a communist. So like, we're throwing labels around just to throw labels around. But
He was definitely left of Obama,
uh, yeah, I mean, fucking Nixon was left of Obama, but
though.
he. So when Howard Zinn's People's History came out,
Hmm.
it was sort of a huge like blow to the normal way of looking at history of like great men and things like that. Where I think communism sort of continues to adhere to the great man theory of history, where you have your Lenins and your Stalins, and like these are the people who did
It's the
the thing.
opposite because that's how communism turned out, but that's not how they predicted it. I believe the great man of theory or woman or person.
Great person of
Okay,
history.
the great founder theory of history. I believe in that, but because that's what happens in practice. But in theory, according to the Marxist dialectical materialism or whatever, everything is just a result of like the interactions between like technology and like technological evolution with human interaction and stuff. And it's a very deterministic view of history. It's like we're
Well,
inevitably building towards this end of history type.
so Howard Zinn would argue, and I think David Graeber, who was more of an anarchist, kind of extended this theory that like, well, it is more so movements of a large amount of people, because like where how it was taught before, the Civil Rights Act gained the rights for like black people, and later there was one that was like more for women and things like that. Where Howard Zinn would argue it was the large scale protests that pressured the Congress and finally
Hmm.
Lyndon Baines Johnson to sign that act. Had those people not protested, for what reason would he have done that other than the goodness of his heart, which
Hmm.
we probably don't think is there. But
I mean, we could say it was the interplay of various
yeah,
factors, and that
yeah,
was certainly one of them.
yeah.
Um,
And David Graeber would extend that to like we have different ways of doing things, and
mhm.
I would have to like remember what he was saying about that. But yeah, where they diverge nowadays, I think, is more like, I mean, obvious, like the Marxist-Leninist,
Mhm.
they name their movement out of their heroes,
Mhm.
like where
We
anarchists,
can't help it. No matter
yeah,
how much we try and say, "Oh no, we're past that. We just believe in these rational material processes." We're always gonna have that one guy who's like, "He's the
well, yeah,
man."
well, I mean, and it's not to deny that
Mhm.
like there aren't cool people that did awesome stuff. Like at the beginning of this conversation, I was like, yeah,
Mhm.
Emmett Goldman, Mother
Mhm.
Jones, Nestor Makhno. I'm forgetting a bunch of people, but we also are like, Oh, I mean, yeah, they were a person that was at the head of a group, or like I was saying, the people, the leaders in the Stop Cop City movement
Hmm.
were just the people who took it upon themselves to print flyers and go and ask people to join them,
Hmm.
which is a lot of like, I mean, you can say that about Nestor Makhno, but he was pissed about being a slave and punched his I forgot the Russian word for it, but it basically translates to daddy in the mouth, and was like, I'm done with this. And then he asked the other slaves, like, are you done with this too? And of course they're like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore.
Hmm.
So, they keep, and then that goes into the whole movement of the Black Army.
Hmm. Okay. So before we get into the interesting part, what, real quick, in like 3 to 5 minutes, who would you say are the philosophers that most influenced your anarchist like worldview? We can edit
Um,
the sipping parts
yeah.
out.
Sorry, I've
No,
been
you're
talking
good.
a lot of
You're good.
water.
You're good.
Well, I mean, David Graeber is not necessarily a philosopher. He's more of an anthropologist. There was like,
That's fair. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
he probably is, just not.
Well, yeah,
He doesn't call himself
well,
that.
yeah. I mean, like I also have contention between like straight philosophy and the harder sciences of like observation and whatnot, because,
Mm.
and I'll get into that in a second. But what was his name? He wrote The Conquest of Bread.
Kropotkin.
That's it.
Mm.
Kropotkin. He's like the anarchist Marx. He's like
Mm.
where a lot of this ideology stems from. And I like him more than Marx because one, he's a more readable author.
Mm.
But also he takes like Marxist. I don't remember how contemporary they were. I believe they were contemporary, but like,
We'll put it on the screen
yeah,
at post.
well, don't put anything that proves me wrong.
Mm.
He takes like yeah, we as workers should, band together, but like he takes it more in a sociological sense, a sociological direction of like, where Marx would be like, yeah, the worker does, this is how the economy works, and this is why like the labor theory of value, where like you put your labor in, and blah blah blah. Boring. Kropotkin takes it in like, well, yeah, you are the people who are doing the thing. You are the people who are going in the mine. So instead of like allowing the owner of the mine to extract all of the wealth that the mine take provides, demand that he spend some of that wealth on making on the technological advancements that we have developed, such as venting, things like that. Also, like the person who built those apartments in France, the apartments in Paris, are dead. They did it, they used it, and now those, why are they not available to the people who are sitting on the street? Because somebody owns it and is, I mean, and there's the capitalist or hierarchical sense of like, well, yeah, this person owns it and is so that, and so they are maintaining it. But in practice, are they? Had they been? At that time, not necessarily. And even now, currently, not necessarily. Like, we being college students have our own stories of like, whether through our own experience or our friends, of horrible landlords.
Mhm.
A person who is in control of our living space, but will not repair it, and two, will not allow you to repair it in a
Mm.
way that you think is correct. So Kropotkin takes that idea and is like, well, fuck them. Take over the apartment buildings.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so that's kind of why I think he's a little bit cooler, because he actually gives you kind of a plan of action, and that kind of thing. It in one of his other books that I forget the name of right now, he sort of turns Darwin's theory of evolution on its head.
Yeah, that's the part I really liked, where he's
Yeah,
like, it's not all just raw competition.
yeah,
There is
yeah.
cooperation that goes on as well. And I think it's a synthesis of both. There is competition, there's ruthless competition, but there's also mutualistic cooperation.
And if we were competing against each other this entire time,
Mhm.
we would have never figured out medicine.
For real.
We would have never and so going back to David Graeber, that's kind of where he points to like when modern humanity sort of started is when we find remnants of people who like fix broken bones rather than like when we found spears in them in other
Mhm.
people's heads. We
Mhm.
found people who had a broken bone and it seemed like it had been mended at some point and they lived longer than
Mhm.
they would have
Yeah.
previously.
It really is both. Like
Yeah.
you really can't have one without the other. Like even to compete, you need to cooperate with other people to adequately compete.
Yeah, you need to cooperate with your tribe to hunt
Mhm.
animals before the other tribe cooperates better than
Mhm.
you. But
Exactly.
and then anarchism kind of takes that like idea and is like, well, what if we just try to like work together with a broader group of
Mhm.
people that we don't necessarily know or have to know?
Mhm.
And then, you can there's obvious criticisms of like, well, what about leftist infighting? And it's like, well, yeah, that's fucking human.
Mhm.
Like, what are you gonna do about it?
And I respect you saying that you admitted and you kind of preempted what my next segment was going to be, which is where I grill you on the history. But you preempted it by saying that anarchism like is unlikely to be the dominant governing force of a large polity.
Well, because that is completely antithetical to
Mhm.
the project. To
Exactly.
to be a dominant governing force is like that's not at
Exactly.
all what we're trying to do.
Exactly. But then
We are trying to flatten the governing
mhm.
forces. And that's going to look different at every different part of history
Mhm.
and in every different part of the world because I like to describe it as like, well, power rears its ugly head like weeds in a garden, and you
Mhm.
have to continually weed the garden. You're never going to stop.
But to destroy the bad power, you need to accumulate power yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And
That's
that's
like the
also why a
paradox.
lot
It's
of
a paradox. And that leads me to the historical segment, which is like I was reading about the Spanish Civil War, and there was like there was like the Stalinist communists
Mhm,
on the left, and then there was like the moderate Republicans, and there was like the POUM, which Orwell fought for, which was like the Trotskyist Marxist.
mhm.
And then there was the CNTFAI, which was like
The cunt fight.
yeah, yeah, which was like a syndicalist, anarcho,
Mhm.
something like that. And in the beginning, they rallied a lot of worker support. They were behind a lot of the grassroots level organization and like, yeah, hand the guns out and everything to the people and get the workers to like unionize at a very ground level, like not centralizing, not Stalin like telling them
Mhm.
what to do, but like a very grassroots level. However, like as the Civil War dragged on, it just seemed that the like in war specifically you need like that hierarchical like centralization.
That is a traditional view of that time,
Hmm.
but like a lot of anarchists will say that like, well, they were being undermined and defunded by the Marxist side or like the communist side of the left, and there was a joke at the time
Hmm.
like where they would like the anarchists when they had enough food because they were there's a really good book on it. I'll have to when I go home I'll tell you
Hmm.
because I somewhere in there. But they had a really good distributional system for like throughout the farms and stuff and like people were like really happy with it
Hmm.
to the point where like they would expropriate the farms and like have but they wouldn't do it in the communist style. They would be like, well, you work here, you know what you're doing. So,
Hmm.
like, do you want to be part of this system?
Hmm.
And then if somebody said no, they'd be like, okay. And then just go to the next guy
Hmm.
over. And a lot of the time, those people who said no over time, like, would see these farms, this distribution network, and be like, oh, okay, can I join?
Because they'd see it actually work, like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
proof of see that's something I have so much more respect for than this fucking Marxist Leninist bullshit. But like my main complaint is that like everything you're saying sounds so wonderful in theory, but my
Yeah,
greatest fear is that you will just be used as a cudgel by the Marxists to
yeah.
bludgeon their fucking right-wing enemies, and then the moment you
Well,
have outlived your
yeah.
usefulness, you will just be put in the fucking
Well,
ground.
and hey, you know, totally fine with bludgeoning my right wing enemies. That's totally chill with me. And we'll get into that
Are you
too,
fine
because
with getting put in the ground right after though?
no, and like you're probably going to bring it up, but yeah, that is a thing that happens when like the communists, when the like it takes a coalition of everybody to get over the hurdle of monarchism and whatever, like liberalism, and then all. I mean, not liberalism, but fascism is another example where like
That was a Freudian slip. I think you do want to get rid of
well, it
liberalism.
is. Hey, we'll get into that too if you want, but it takes a broad coalition of people to, resist these sort of things.
Mhm.
And then when these, so again, the Russian Revolution, the anarchists helped them win. And then like they are completely turned on by the Trotskyists are murdered by the Bolsheviks.
Mhm.
The I forgot the major battle, but what it was called, but like they called all of the anarchist groups out to this like one place, this boat on the sea, and like then they started to get like attack the Bolsheviks started attacking them, and or the Trotskyists. I would have to ask my friend this one. He's more into or they're more into the history of that than I am, but
Mhm.
yeah, they corralled all the anarchists into one place and then basically shot them all in like a boat that they were all trapped on, and it really fucking sucked.
Mhm.
And this happened a lot through the early Bolshevik Revolution, and it was to maintain cohesion when like the anarchists would have argued like, well, is the cohesion necessary or can we just kind of live our lives? But then the obvious argument against that would be like, well, what if somebody takes a lot of power? And then the argument against that is like, well, we just won't listen to them,
Yeah, but
But then,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
It's just like
it
that
just goes
paradox.
back and forth.
Yeah, to destroy the bad power, you need to accumulate good power.
Or not
Yeah,
allow the bad power, or not,
true.
because like in David Graeber's The Theory of Everything or whatever it was called, he specifically mentions the Native Americans at the time of when the French colonists came in. So like way before the British and all that. So they would say to the French, the chief's power is only to the tip of his tongue. So like the chief is or the person who is in power can only convince people. They can't coerce or whatever. Whereas like the French were always like in fear of their commanders. And like the Native Americans were like confused by this and like, we're dude, are you okay? So that just kind of shows that, and then he kind of extends that to like that being more the inspiration for like Renaissance thought or the not the Renaissance, the other one.
The Enlightenment.
That it is. Enlightenment thought.
Well, I mean, once
Well,
again, it's a lovely thought, and like the Native Americans. There's a lot to respect about the way they lived, like in relative harmony with
mm,
nature. I know they ran the buffalo off the cliff and stuff, but compared to industrial society, they lived
yeah,
in
yeah.
harmony with nature. But I mean, once again, their track record at winning wars is
Well,
not
yeah.
exactly stellar.
And that's the problem is that like when you are a a flat structure of
Mhm.
like suggestion, then it's
Mhm.
hard to rally a large group of people
Mhm.
as opposed to when you're on a hierarchical structure of reward and punishment
Mhm.
where like no fucking anarchist food not bombs has any money ever. The United States government has shitloads.
Mhm.
So like if you are a poor person, you don't have really many prospects and you are just trying to feed yourself, are you going to join Food Not Bombs, who has food and friendship and they're a lot of lovely people? Or are you going to join ICE with, their several $1,000 signing bonus, their like promise of, you know, whatever, however much they're paying, like this more hard wire or like substantial like guarantee of not success, but like, stability.
Hmm. Well, I think it depends. I think like if like because Food Not Bombs is just like it's like a charity sort of, right? Like it's a non
We would
it's
not,
not structured like that, but
yeah.
it's like it's not it doesn't have land with
It's a
places you
mutual,
can
we would
live.
call it a mutual aid network. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. But like I'm saying like if there was some
That's what it was called, mutual aid. That was by Kaprakin.
got you.
Yeah.
So like let's say they had a plot of land which was like an
Mhm.
anarchist free state or free territory
Mhm.
and it's clean, it's not used heroin needles on the it's because like that's the stereotype a lot of people have of
It's not
anarchism. It's like
Chaz, yeah.
yeah, it's not exactly, it's not fucking Chaz with that SoundCloud rapper
Yeah, yeah,
warlord
yeah,
like
yeah.
taking that shit over.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, and there
if
have been
well, my point is if people could see like what an anarchist society would look like, and it looks like a desirable place to live, and it's a classless, moneyless, like
Mhm.
whatever society, like people would go for that even if
The
you
state
don't have as much
yeah,
GDP.
I'm just kidding,
Yeah,
but
the
I'm
state
not
that
really kidding.
that
I'll explain what I mean by that
yeah,
later, but go on with
and
what you're saying.
I've heard that argument a lot with like Waco and
Mhm.
like they have done
Well,
that.
not Waco, but
Well,
uh,
like just
the
with
Paris. I'm
alternative.
talking more like the Paris Commune,
Mm,
the like what we were talking about with the CNTFA
mm.
and that kind of thing, where like so the Paris Commune was like pretty fine, pretty successful in its goal of like creating a flatter structure. Obviously, there's some modern critiques that we can have of it because like well
Shifting morality, yeah,
well
shifting like social mores.
well because like it was a less hierarchical organization of the time
Mhm,
because all of the men got votes,
mhm.
which wasn't a thing at the time.
Yeah, you
But
had to
like
have prop.
women and minorities and whatever didn't really have a say,
Mm,
which was like in America that was crazy that we
mm,
did that.
mm,
But for the time that was crazy, and they had organized it pretty well. The what resources they had was distributed democratically and things, and that's kind of more what we want than like evenly, you know, because the evenly is not equally is not really possible.
mm,
It's more like we would just like to have a say in it
mm.
kind of thing. But back to
Decrease the disparity.
yeah, back to the Paris Commune, they were doing pretty fine, and then they had run out the king at the time, Louis the whatever, and he was in Versailles. And when he was in Versailles, he was able to gather his troops and other forces from other
What
states.
year was this?
18.
Oh, okay, okay. When you said Louis, I was thinking of the French Revolution. I was like, yeah.
It's one of the French revolutions.
Mm,
I forgot which, but it was at the time of Marx. Like he
mm,
wrote about it because it was like a a communal project
mm,
in the vein of what he was trying to write about. He or like in so the king gathered the forces from other states that were like, well, if they are successful in this, then that is a really huge problem for us because they're if we
mm.
don't have power, then what are we doing? What are we
Yeah,
doing?
with the yeah.
Yeah, and so they were able to come in and just plow through the Paris Commune and destroy it and whatever. Similar to the CNTFA, like
I would argue that was more the fault of like leftist infighting,
yeah.
definitely.
Well,
Like that, yeah.
because it was the
Yeah.
communists that undermined the anarchists in
Mhm.
that part. But
I would argue the anarchists also undermine themselves with because that is a byproduct of having less structure, is their
mhm,
will by nature be more infighting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I would say like, well, that infighting is fine a in the sense that like it's fine because we need to talk these problems out.
Mhm.
And anarchism kind of gives you a structure to do that
Mhm.
if it is not pressured from the outside.
Exactly. In
So,
peacetime, that's a great system, but wars are won through decisiveness of action. You have to fucking like you need to
well,
attack blitzkrieg, motherfucker, like straight through.
yeah,
And
and
if you move slower than them, like it's over. Like, and that's why that authoritarian system of like we're marshaling all of our resources and we're like initiating a plan across a 2,000-mile front to like do this and this all at once on a strict timetable. That
yeah,
work as
but
a
that has its own problems too. If
Mhm.
look at the Nazis, they didn't win that war.
Well, they didn't win it because their diplomacy was retarded. Like the Nazis on a tactical level were extremely good, but on a strategic grand strategy level, they were so bad because they just literally
Yeah,
everyone hated them. They literally got the capitalist US and the Soviet Union to team up against them. That's how
yeah.
much they got everyone around them to
Well, yeah,
hate
because
them
they well,
because they were
they
equal. Like, yeah.
started a war with everybody, and that's not a really good
Mhm.
strategy. And I'm not going to strategize for the Nazis
Yeah, yeah,
because they may be coming back, or they
yeah.
may already be here, or they may already be in power. But that to your point, like that is why right wing movements seem to be so much more successful, is
Mhm.
because they have that ability to incentivize cooperation
Mhm.
where like why is Ben Shapiro's why is Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire so successful when it is just kind of inane? not really that entertaining. The Koch brothers, not the Koch brothers, the Wilkes brothers paid a ton, who are oil magnates, they're just really rich people, paid a bunch of money for it to be advertised and for it to keep limping along regardless of views.
Hmm.
And my theory is that it is to like sow confusion and dissension, specifically with climate change, so that the oil magnates can maintain control over
Hmm.
the energy.
I never even thought
Blah
of
blah
that.
blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But and I'll fucking write a book about that
That's
someday.
interesting. I wasn't even thinking about that angle, but I would totally, that's one thing that I hate because I would consider myself like I don't know what I am because I don't think I know enough to like place myself firmly in one category, but my impulse puts me towards a more conservative worldview.
Hmm.
And
Well,
the one thing I hate about conservatives though is how much they like meat ride the fucking oil companies
mhm,
and they're oh actually it's good that we're throwing like 1 billion
yeah.
tons of trash in the ocean. That's actually it's like bro, come
Well, because if you are a organization that's not regulated and not taxed,
on.
then you have the ability to continue to accumulate money, which is the thing that buys, cooperation, but not loyalty.
Hmm.
And I'll get into that in a minute, but you can continue to buy cooperation, and that continues the, inflow of money to your system. And actually, I think I did write about this under,
Is it still up?
yeah, it's called Is Taylor Swift a Psyop? And it's on the Long Beach Anarchist Collective
Okay.
Substack, I
I'll
believe.
link it to
I believe that's
the
what it's
two
called.
people watching this.
Yeah, hey, it's really funny. Read it. But the idea is that if you disrupt, you know, your political opponents who are not necessarily like able to gather that sort of cooperation
Hmm.
because they don't have that kind of money, you can continue to keep the money flowing into your organization, and therefore, like, and that's one of the main critiques of anarcho-capitalism, which is just libertarianism, which is, I forgot what it was before that, but did you know they stole our word?
What? Like
The libertarians stole, because it was called libertarian, like anarchism. If you go,
libertarian socialism.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you go outside of the United States, it's still called whatever their language's version of libertarian socialism. But Murray
I call
Roth,
that the serious people version of
yeah, yeah.
anarchism. Yeah.
Well, no, because
Uh-huh.
Murray Roth something, specifically like organized to steal the word libertarian
Hmm.
from the libertarians, from the anarchists, to disrupt the anarchist movement.
Hmm. That's interesting.
And he's
Psyops on top of
Murray
psyops.
Rothbard, Murray Rothko, something like that. But yeah, he,
Rothbard is yeah, he's like a famous, he's that bald
yeah, the
libertarian guy.
pencil
Yeah,
guy.
yeah,
The my critique of the fucking pencil thing that keeps going around on Instagram and stuff is like, no, that's just people cooperating to develop, like, that's just cooperation. That doesn't necessarily have to be capitalism. That's and yeah, the money and capital, like I was saying, provides the incentive towards
yeah.
cooperation. But what happens when you don't have that capital, that money? Then they're not going to cooperate with you.
Yeah.
Where like in anarchism, because it's more like friend based, more like social contract based, or whatever is a better word for that, it is more loyal making, more like, you know, and you but you don't really have the resources to do the things that you want to do, but you have the friendship and the people to help you with that. So whatever resources you do have, and because you are friends, because there is the motivation of loyalty, a lot more things can get done
Hmm.
with what little money and resources they have. Like the communists in the Spanish Civil War were heavily funded by Lenin or Stalin or whoever,
Mhm.
the Russia. Whereas like the anarchists didn't have the benefit of that funding,
Yeah.
but they were able to hold off the fascists with for a while with with the communists, and while still being undermined by the communists, while still being undermined by the fascists, or attacked from all sides.
That leads me to my next question,
Mhm.
which is why are like anarchists so sympathetic to Marxists when like arguably, I would say the Marxists have been worse than any like right
We're
wingers ever have to anarchists.
we're what's the word for it? Bleeding hearts. You know, not we, but like I am at least.
I
But
get,
like,
no,
yeah,
totally. That's what anarchism is. It's like, oh, we want to assume the good in people. If we
exactly.
all get together, it'll be.
And that is the
Mhm,
whole project. Is
mhm,
like, if we are kind and friendly to people, then hopefully that'll cause more friendship and kindness around from other people, and in that we can continue to organize, because that's the experience that we have in our organizing
mhm.
relationships.
And it's an admirable goal. I'm
Yeah,
just significantly more pessimistic about human nature than you
yeah,
are.
yeah. But it is, but also human nature is a lot of things, and what causes a lot of the division is the restriction of human nature to being defined to specific things.
Mhm.
Like, capitalists to defend capitalism will say that human nature is specifically greedy, but I and many people would argue that is a result of capitalist incentive.
Hmm. The deadly sin of capitalists is definitely greed, but I would argue the deadly sin of socialists is envy, because when they see someone doing better than them, they're like, the only way you could do better than me is if some unearned privilege from like
Well,
your.
yeah, but that can in a lot of cases be factual, because a lot of the success of sorry a lot of the not success but a lot of the wealth that is collected by people like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and blah blah blah, whoever, Wilkes brothers, is off of the backs of the people who are doing the actual labor.
True. Bezos is an interesting exception though, because he was born like he was not born into like wealth. Like he was
No,
born to us.
I mean, like,
He
he
was born
wasn't
to.
born in like Elon Musk wealth, but he was able, like, his parents were able to give him hundreds of thousands of dollars, which a
No,
lot
no,
of
no, no.
people aren't able to do.
His
Like,
he actually that's not true. His stepmom, or no, his biological mom was a single mother. He was born like to her. His stepdad was kind of rich. Like he was like a petroleum engineer for BP, but he actually came to America as a Cuban immigrant who didn't even speak any English. So his story is not like or
how
take.
big was his sugar plantation?
I don't think he had. That's the
I know, I'm
thing.
just fucking around.
Yeah, but like, and to make an even more simpler example, my sister and me, we come from the same socioeconomic, like I'd say middle class background. But here I like she right now she's working at a tech company in San Francisco making like
Hell yeah,
six
dude.
figures.
Yeah.
She's like killing it. And I'm here still 25-year-old community college student. I'm smoking weed playing video games.
Yeah.
So it's like there is an
Well,
element of human nature that will lead you to like either pursue an ambitious goal or just to be some bohemian layabout that's just like
yeah.
hosting a podcast at LTC.
Well, so the argument there is, regardless of your like where you started, you still are able to take advantage and extract inordinate resources from your workforce. So, like, yeah, if Jeff Bezos started from dirt poor with one arm tied behind his back, but still created Amazon, which does exploit its workers, which does like cause, problems for its employees, to
Mhm.
the point where, like, in certain areas of the United States where they employ people, they have run through the stable of workers that would be, not qualified is the wrong word,
Like willing to work.
willing,
Yeah.
yeah, that are like the group of workers that they usually target for those kind of jobs, like undereducated,
Mm,
poor, from poor backgrounds, that kind of thing. And so they ran through these people within a couple years because of the conditions that they had to work in.
mhm,
And what the Amazon union that was started a few years ago,
mhm,
their argument is like, well, we should have a better distribution of wealth, not, and in the Kropotkin sense, not necessarily more money, but that would be great, but better safety features,
mm,
more safety in the, warehouses.
mhm.
Like that warehouse that was hit by a tornado where a bunch of people died because they weren't evacuating quick enough because they had to get their quotas.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's pretty sickening.
the peeing in bottles and stuff,
Yeah, that's just like
which
some next level
yeah,
sick shit.
they might argue like, well, that's a personal choice. You could have gone to the bathroom, but the capitalist incentive of like, well, then we'll dock your will put a
No, I worked
negative.
at Amazon Fresh for like a week,
Yeah.
and they have like a ticker. So they track your employee number
Mhm.
and they track how many items you're sorting. And if it's under the quota number, like they will
And if
dock you and fire you
and if you
eventually.
have IBS, you're shit out of luck because you're shitting all the time. So like,
It's like iDubbbz.
yeah. So, that is exploitation, and the profit from that level of work goes, yeah, sure, it goes to your pay,
Mhm.
but a lot of it goes to, the organization, to Jeff Bezos, to
Making it a more livable work environment and like, or like if
no,
you
what
were
I'm
to
not,
get what
yeah,
you
but
want. Okay,
I'm
yeah,
saying,
but you're saying
I'm
like
saying
in the
they
system we
shouldn't do
have
that.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I'm saying like unions generally are, yes, asking for more pay because that is a tangible, like, that's a tangible thing to like argue for to get. But they also very often argue for like better working conditions, like more time off to see your family.
yeah.
Is like, that's also exploitation. You're taking away this person's life.
Hmm.
So, what was that noise?
It's just the camera said 20%. It's
Oh, okay.
fine.
And we can wrap this up whenever. We've been talking for a while,
Yeah,
but
it's all
like,
good. I mean,
but
we
the
have the
main,
room till 6:30.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, the main thing here is like the in the Kropotkin sense, in the Conquest of Bread, he argued for like, well, the people at the top shouldn't take all of the profit. But also, he, I believe, argued, and I would argue, like, they still deserve some of the money. Like, they aren't, you know, we all
Mhm.
like labor costs money.
If you develop, yeah,
They are doing a bit of the labor. They are doing some of the labor, the organizational work or the developmental work or
exactly.
whatever.
Like
And
developing a whole new
yeah,
system should give you like a disproportionate reward because at least
I'm
initially.
not saying that, but yeah, yeah.
But I believe that because like if you can develop a more efficient system than what came before, that in my opinion gives more value to society than even being like the best worker that can like be the most productive because you've
Yeah.
created a whole new it's not just oh I can
Well,
hammer more nails than the next guy. It's I've created a new way to hammer nails where you can hammer 10 nails at once
I
instead
created
of
a
just one.
10-headed hammer.
It,
Yeah.
right there and it's automatic it hammers itself
Yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah
Or the just a fucking nail gun.
yeah
But
well yeah
anyway, yeah, well, yeah, we're college students, not construction workers.
yeah yeah.
But in that sense,
Mhm.
yeah, and like I don't, some anarchists and many socialists and communists would probably say like, no, they should suffer along the rest of us. But I would say like, yeah, I mean, you came up with a good idea. You should be at least socially praised for
Mhm.
it. And in my perfect, space communism world,
Mhm.
you wouldn't necessarily want, the you wouldn't want the yachts, you wouldn't want the mansions, you wouldn't want the exploitative age gap relationship with hot blonde big titty girls. Because your needs had been met your entire life, you have access to and the ability to go to beautiful beaches, which a lot of people right now don't. Like
At the beach, yeah.
we live at the beach. I can, from my house, it's a bit of a long walk, but I can walk there.
Mhm.
You live in the middle of fucking Ohio dirt farmer area. You're Some of those people will never see the ocean. And
Yeah.
that's obviously lessening now. It's becoming a lot more accessible and stuff like that. But I would argue like if things were distributed a little bit more evenly or just democratically, yeah, Jeff Bezos wouldn't have his super yacht that couldn't fit through whatever that dam was
Mm.
in the Netherlands, which, oh no, boo-hoo. But we would have more means of transportation. We would have more ways of like going from Ohio to the Pacific Ocean to the
Mhm.
Atlantic Ocean.
That's
And
fair. The
yeah.
one thing I would disagree on that is the idea that like the only reason people commit evil acts is because their socioeconomic needs haven't been met. I do believe that they're a very small minority, but
There are
there are
people that, yeah.
fundamentally evil people in this
Well, I
world.
wouldn't say they're fundamentally evil. I just say they're like, because, that gets into,
Jeffrey Dahmer.
well, no, because that gets into like more philosophical realm
Mhm.
that I don't have the experience of like understanding or knowing.
You can spit. Feel free to speak
Yeah,
on
yeah,
things
but
that you are completely unqualified to
yeah,
speak
well,
on.
and I mean, and that's not to stop, that has never really stopped me before, but I'm being recorded. So I would say like, and that's not the argument that I was making, but it is an interesting like wrench in there. The argument that I was making was that you wouldn't necessarily want for that kind of thing. You would just but people would still like be like, no, Jeff Bezos fucking came up with a really good distributional way of like organizing goods. There's a really good book called the Socialist State of Walmart, the something of Walmart.
I know what you're getting. It's like how I saw this video called "How Amazon
Mhm.
Achieved the Soviet Dream" or
And
something.
it's a really
Yeah.
good book, and it is, and they Amazon and Walmart have taken the math that was developed in the Soviet Union that just wasn't like technology wasn't there yet for like that this math to work for the distribution of goods, but it does work for like these huge organizations.
I thought it was from Allende's Chile, that Project
No, no,
Cybersyn thing.
that is that was aided by like the math, the linear math that causes this to be able to be possible was developed in Russia, and then like the cyber
Hmm.
I believe is what it was called, was a product of that was being, that Allende wanted to, or somebody came down and like advertised this to, or selling this to Allende, and Allende was like, okay, cool. How is this going to help with the
Hmm.
people? And so they were going to develop that before like the CIA came in and fucked everything up. Anyway, and that's a fact. That's not, I'm not saying that that is a fact that happened.
I
Uh,
actually have a book about it. It's called Cybernetic Revolutionaries. I got it from the library right
oh,
here.
that's a sick. I
Yeah.
see that this we need to
Ooh.
bring this style back.
Yeah.
We
It's
need
like
this
retro
stuff. It's
futuristic.
fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Anyway,
No, that was the real operations room.
yeah,
And
it's sick, and we need
yeah.
there. We need that fucking 70s retro
Hmm.
future stuff back. But like,
But most of the math did come, or most of the tech came from a British cybernetics guy called Stafford Beer. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure the Soviet Union contributed in some way, but I feel like socialists,
mm,
they always want to minimize the contributions of people who are not in their camp and then maximize the contribute. And
well,
every group does this.
so do
Yeah,
capitalists want to minimize the
exactly.
contributions of
Exactly.
socialists,
But
especially in
every side
Russia.
does
But
that. Every
yeah,
group
yeah.
does that.
But the like, at least this book argued this. But like, if this system was used more equitably, more democratically, then we would all prosper so much more. Because, but it is being used for the profit of Walmart and Amazon.
See, I wish there was a way to test your ideas somehow, but it seems like all the land other than Antarctica has already been taken up. You mentioned space earlier. Do you think that maybe space as the final frontier could be like a proving ground for these ideologies?
And, if it doesn't kill us, maybe.
Elaborate.
Space sucks. Space is a horrible, anti-human, just awful place to be.
The ocean sucks.
Well, yeah, but you get to the surface of it, you can breathe air.
Yeah.
It's really hard to find air, water, literally anything in outer space. There's a really good book about it I'm reading called A City on Mars, and I believe the couple that wrote it has a podcast as well, but it there's a lot of issues with that. And like one of my favorite libertarian things about them is their like total inability of thinking ahead, where like they obviously like we all have our problems with the government, but they're rich enough to do something about it. So they will do what's called seasteading, where
Oh,
they
yeah.
get
I've heard Peter Thiel talk about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you should look into it. You should for your podcast thing do the thing about it. There's a
I was
really good book
planning to
called
actually. I'm glad you brought it
there's
up.
a really good book called Adventure Capitalism that goes over this
Hmm.
idea. But oh, all of the time it's like we're gonna go and like not have a government. And anarchists obviously are. We're gonna go and do our commune
Hmm.
kind of thing, and then it breaks down because you need to trade with people. You need to work with the outside world.
Hmm.
And so they, set up their boats or whatever, and then like they run out of food and they're like, well, we need to go buy food from somewhere. And then they had already antagonized the local government. Like,
Hmm.
what are you gonna do? And it's just really funny. But and like I said, the anarchists are guilty of this too. Like they'll like go and like we're gonna build our commune, and then
Hmm.
there's a bunch of leftist infighting where like
Hmm.
you bang where like, what's it called? The like love is supposed to be more abundant, so you're not like so you're in more like a polycool situation,
Mhm.
but then there's still like the jealousy of like, well, I wanted to sleep with whatever their name is,
Yeah.
and like but
We don't have to get into polycules on this one. Let me save that for next one.
yeah, and well, and that is sort of a libertarian idea too, and
Mhm.
like anarchist idea,
Mhm.
and horny dude idea, like it is
Yeah.
a horny girl idea, horny that
Emphasis on the third one you
yeah,
said.
horny they them idea, like it is just it's like we all like banging, whatever. Should it be restricted? Yeah, it really depends.
Depends on the people.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
depends on the people involved. And that is,
But for 90% of people, yes,
and
because they get jealous so
yeah,
easy. Yeah.
but to kind of wrap all of this sort of meandering conversation up,
Yeah.
that is the main ethos of anarchism,
Mhm.
not polycules.
Back
Uh,
to your
but
space point. What do you think is like obviously we don't have the technology for right now,
mhm,
but let's say that the technology is facilitated. I disagree with the idea that there's not a lot of resources in space. They're spread out, they're hard to get to, but there are
mhm.
like giant fucking like comets that are just made out of ice that you could harvest
Well,
that shit.
where would we put them, and how do we get them to where we're putting them?
Well, you could have satellite, like drone satellites going
Mhm.
out collecting like whatever molecules you need. And then you could have like synthesizing, like you'd need to have a very advanced knowledge of like atomic level, like being able to assemble molecules at the subatomic or atomic level
Well, why would you need that?
to create water and oxygen
To
and
get to extract the water from these.
yeah.
There are actually like water ice deposits all like on the moon, on Mercury,
Hmm.
places where you wouldn't really think that they are.
On Mars, yeah.
Definitely on Mars. But then you get into the idea of like who has the rights to it. And if somebody has the rights to it, who else wants the rights to it, and what are they going to do about it?
But I mean, you answered all of that with like your spiel on what anarchism is. So let's take your system and let's put it in like an O'Neill cylinder in space that's like has let's say a population of like 100,000
Mm.
people. Because
Well,
yeah.
okay, then perfect anarchism is essentially what Marx described as perfect communism, where we all have a say in the distribution of goods. And yeah, then you get into the idea of experts and people who like study and whatnot. And do they have more authority over whatever their thing is that they studied? And it's like, that really depends on the people. That's what I was going with you know, that's what I was going with a minute ago, where I was like, well, that's the essential ethos of anarchism. It depends on the people involved. What do they want to do? So it take anarchism, the whole thing is taking agency away from the people in power and giving it to the people who are affected by distribution of resources. So
And capitalists would hear that as taking from the most productive people and giving to the least productive people.
well, I'd argue that because the method of production is distributed amongst so many people, it looks like them individually are least productive, but them at the manufacturing floor of the manufacturer is where the thing that the most productive, the manager, the salesperson, the CEO,
Mhm,
gets the thing that they're selling,
mhm,
the production. It's the thing will not be produced if the people who produce it aren't doing their job,
mhm.
which is the whole idea around strikes and
Mhm.
factory takeovers
Yeah.
and whatnot. What I'm saying is like it is a reforming of our concept of what is productive.
The neurons cannot survive without all of the body's cells like
Yeah,
supplying them and like
yeah.
feeding them and all that.
Well, and there was a really funny line in one of the books I was reading recently called it's by Malcolm Harris. It's his most recent book. I
Mhm,
forgot, but he's explaining sort of this idea, and like the line is the brain isn't even in control of the body because like I was saying in philosophy club, do you act the same when you're hungry versus when you
for
aren't?
real. And even then, depending on your diet, your gut bacteria can
Mhm.
actually influence what you want to eat.
Yeah.
So it's like there is an interplay. I will
Yeah.
agree that there's a extremely complex interplay of different factors from up here,
Mhm.
down here, side to side. All of them are interacting in this fractal fucking pattern that's like
Yeah.
so hard to trace. Yeah.
Yeah, and then, like I was trying to say earlier, like to bring this all to a close is like it really depends on the people there, and that's what people don't really like about anarchism from the outside, is because like the main question that is lodged against like anarchists and anarchist theory is like, well, how's it going to solve everything? And the correct answer is, I don't know, we'll figure it out. Which
Well,
people hate that.
the more reasonable version of that question is like, how are you going to create a stable and productive and cohesive society when everyone is encouraged to just kind of like go off and do their
Mhm.
own thing? And you explained it with like mutual aid and like goodwill and coming together.
Mhm.
And I want to see experiments. Like I like last semester I did my research project on the autonomous administration of
Yeah,
northeastern
that's really
Syria.
sick.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
thank you.
watched that.
Thank you. And that's basically a quasi as close to anarchism as you have in the modern world.
The Rojava experiment,
Mhm.
that's going pretty fine. They have
That's what it is. They evolved it. They have to keep changing the names for political, but yeah, now
yeah.
it's called like the
I
autonomous
thought your
administration.
project it was in
Burma.
Burma.
It
Yeah.
was saying that the system that's in place in Rojava
Mm.
is a good solution for the current like
Yeah.
sectarian
Yeah,
conflict in
yeah.
Burma. Yeah, yeah.
Wait, and because asking people how they want, their local and, broader, more
Hmm.
federal system to be organized is a good system. Like it if it and they're doing a surprisingly good job of resisting outside pressure in
Yeah,
Java.
which is why I was so impressed with them because
Yeah.
usually from the left I'm used to a lot of this
Mhm.
and no like in practice, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they actually fucking practice what they preach and
Yeah, and
that actually made me much more sympathetic to anarchist ideas. We are kind of coming close to the end of the time, so I want to get through a couple more things. Fuck, there's one thing I wanted to ask you. I'm trying to remember. Give me 1 second.
okay.
What was it? Do you think like one of my points was like you're gonna have to be with communities that are very different from you.
Yeah.
So for like an anarchist like patchwork of like different societies to work, anarchists are gonna have to work with monarchical societies. It'll be way more decentralized and small scale, like in Burma,
Yeah.
but there will be tribal confederations, tribal monarchies. There'll be like ecclesiastical like theocracies. There will be these entities, and the people who are part of that, the majority of them probably will want to remain part of that. And
Mhm.
like all of your like modern like ideas of like, oh, let's be more liberal and this and that, it might not appeal to them. It might actually repulse them greatly. So
Well,
like
not my modern age, but
yeah, of course you're so enlightened that you'll just convince them like Jesus
Well,
like
no, what I'm saying is like I don't necessarily adhere to that, like proselytizing. You know
mm,
what I mean? And this is a fictional story, but we're in a fictional realm of like
mm,
theory at this
mm,
point, right? Robert Evans is a really like is one of the main, people who like he's more of like a reporter. He does Behind the Bastards, which is a podcast about horrible people, but he also runs like a news network called the It Could Happen Here.
I think I've seen it in my
Yeah,
recommended.
it's a really good like aggregation of like news, like a daily news, like NPR's The Daily or whatever,
Mhm,
but from a more anarchist perspective,
mhm,
more like people focused perspective. And he wrote a really funny, really like touching novel called After the Revolution, and it kind of deals with what you're asking.
mhm,
A fractured United States is, there's a after the revolution, there's a fractured United States where like some of the United States remains the sort of liberal version of the United States that it is now. Then there is a monarchy in Albuquerque. There's a Christo-fascist nation in
mhm,
Texas. California's doing whatever it's doing. And then there's a one of the reasons why the war broke up the United States was because, or like one of the things that happened was people got like these technologically advanced bodies and
mhm,
like, tech stuff in their body that made them more strong and
mhm.
powerful and able to like,
Ubermensch.
yeah, Uber, yeah, these are Uber people.
Mhm,
And they have a rolling sort of commune that just is like it's roaming
Like a
in the desert.
nomadic.
Yeah. And it's called Rolling Fuck. And they so the main like plot or the main like conflict is they ran out of Cheetos, and the last place in America that makes Cheetos is through the Christo-fascist
That's pretty funny.
place. And it deals with a lot of the like one of the main characters is a girl that lives in the, liberal part of America, and she is attracted by the Christo-fascist group because he did a lot of research on ISIS
Mhm.
back in the day. And went over there and talked to them and all that stuff. So he takes that research and puts it on this fictional girl, like how that would look in America.
Mhm.
And I highly recommend reading this book.
That sounds
Really,
interesting.
really good.
I actually might. I usually don't read. I usually say, yeah, I'll read that, and then I never do. But with that one, I actually
he's
might.
a mad decent writer. So like, I'm not,
Just the concept sounds very fast. It's like I love those alternate history,
yeah, yeah.
counterfactual type of things for sure. Yeah.
So that's kind of what it would look like. I'm not going to spoil the story for you and everybody, but
Mhm.
that's kind of what it would look like just from that one writer. But he is very knowledgeable in like, the breakup of a federal system, like like what happened in the Syrian civil war
Mhm.
led to Rojava, but
Mhm.
also led to ISIS and all of these other groups. And I guess the main antidote for warlordism is like what Rojava is doing, asking people what they want to do, taking very seriously extremism, and, combating, using different tools to combat against this, including removing them from the general population,
Mhm.
what we would generally call prison, but our prison system sucks so much ass that I don't want to like compare what they
Mhm.
are doing. Like they're treating them as human beings.
Hmm.
Uh,
So you can admit that our carceral system is bad, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't have any sort of prison
we,
system because it is necessary for
I'm,
society.
I'm saying like, yeah, there are some people who are antisocial, who
Because if you
are
don't have
anti-human.
prison, it's just going to be lynch mobs.
Well, yeah,
If you don't have prison and stuff like that.
eh, that is a thing that is another part of human nature that will
Mhm.
be curtailed, but was also encouraged by the apartheid capitalist system of America.
I would disagree. I think that's a universal thing, even if you go back to like
No, but
Indian society
no, yeah,
before.
but I'm saying like, are they doing it in Rojava when they have ample opportunity and people to do that too?
I think it's because those people, they're like the combination of being educated and also very like tough. These are
Mhm.
they're warrior people. Like they're
Yeah,
not
yeah,
like
yeah,
you and
yeah.
me. They've grown up in war their entire life. They're like Spartans
Mhm.
almost. And like if OCC was an anarchist commune and yeah, we're fine. If OCC was an anarchist commune and you ask, okay, who wants to go storm the trenches, the fascist lines? Like no one's gonna. They're gonna be like,
There'd
I'm
be
not.
some,
There'd be like two,
maybe a
but
couple
most
people.
people, yeah, not
Yeah,
enough.
I mean,
Yeah,
this is a population of like 30,000 people who are
yeah.
coming and going. So like,
I'm just saying
I'm
any,
saying
yeah,
one or two,
yeah,
but
yeah.
but my main point with that is like, what's the like, yeah, anarchism isn't going to solve
Mhm.
everything. Anarchism, no political system will.
I was never, yeah,
I know, but
it's
let
an
me,
improve.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
arguing it's an improvement upon the current existing system.
yeah. Which like we still have lynchings. There were two like a couple days ago.
I would argue there would be way more if there was no prison and if people were
Well,
just allowed.
but
Yeah.
the lynchings that we're talking about, obviously, the southern lynchings of black
Mhm.
people and that kind of thing, were encouraged is the wrong word. Like the
They
substrate
like
of,
looked the other way.
well, yeah, the substrate of the state allowed it to happen and perpetuated it.
Talking. I
Yeah,
just need to plug this.
the the state perpetuated it basically because like it was that's just, what happens when a group of people are subjugated or made to be lesser than another group of people. You
True.
have to dehumanize them. And there's another really good book called Making Monsters by, I forgot his name, but it is fantastic, and it deals with this whole thing of like, how do we dehumanize people and why are we doing that?
Mhm.
And it gets to the idea that we are it at some on some level, yeah, it is part of human nature
Mhm.
to view other people who are other than us as others.
I might have messed up by saying lynch because lynching in America has like a racial context.
Mm,
It meant like mob justice
yeah,
because that is a very old thing that predates like, and you're always going to have social pariahs that are like
yeah.
the whole tribe doesn't like them. He's that weird guy in the tribe. No one likes him. And then he does one thing that really pisses everyone off. And then they just kill him.
Well, and then going back to Robert Evans, the After the Revolution, what
Mhm.
some of his commentary on it, because he's talked about it and like how he got to that idea and stuff. And again, with like your idea of like we're going to have like the anarchist communes are going to have to contend with the monarchist
Mhm.
communes and whatever. This then is a world where antisocial people or people who just don't fit in with the certain like state or group or anarchist commune will be pushed out, but they have somewhere else to go that may be more connecting with them.
Imagine all the anti-socials get together. There'll be like some raiders. There'll be like Fallout raiders in real life.
we'll have the incel commune too. Like it'll be fine. But
That's
previous
why you need
to
prison. I don't want those people to be roaming about all free. I don't want that.
well, David Graeber talks about this pretty extensively too in the Dawn of Everything, where like there were different ways of doing things for a very long time, and it is a very modern and very recent thing that everywhere is a liberal democracy.
That's true. You're right about
Uh,
that.
and not to say that any of the systems previous to liberal democracy were much better, but and
There was
not to say that
diversity. Yeah.
yeah, there was diversity or there was like I'm in a ancient philosophy, history of ancient philosophy class right now, and every philosopher is like, yeah, and then the whole town got mad at him, and he just left, and he went to a different town. You can kind of do that here, but like if you are like you're like, where's the guy that shot Charlie Kirk gonna go? Nowhere. Where's if
I
uh
think that's a good thing.
I mean, he was a murderer, but
Yeah.
whatever.
But I get your point, right?
Where's Alex Jones going to go when if and when people turn on him?
Mm,
Or, well, then to reverse the point that you were kind of making about the Charlie Kirk murderer, where Tyler Rittenhouse,
mm.
Kyler Rittenhouse,
Kyle, yeah.
Kyle Rittenhouse,
Yeah, if everyone hates him,
yeah, he also murdered people, but he was accepted by a sort of, and this might be, not PC to say, but an antisocial, violent group of people. Charlie Kirk CPAC.
yeah, that's half but that just goes to show if half the country believes the other is so antagonistic towards the other half, I would agree with you that we need some sort of national divorce or like a voluntary mutually agreed upon like secession, or
Yeah.
I don't want to use the word balkanization because that is associated with like Serbia and genocide, but like a peaceful
Well,
separation.
a peaceful separation would be nice.
Mhm. But that's highly unlikely. It's as utopian as a pure anarchist commune where everyone gets along.
Yeah, yeah. But that's and
Yeah.
again, to kind of bring it back, there will never be a pure
Anything.
any
Yeah.
any political ideology.
Always going to be some yin in the yang and yang in the
Always,
yin.
and
Yeah.
even if you take the ideology that is most closely obsessed with purity, fascism, or whatever.
I think all extremist ideologies are obsessed with purity. All
Well,
extremists.
okay, but
Marxist Leninists, ooh, they purity spiral like a motherfucker.
well, yeah, but the difference there is anarchism. The pure anarchism is the ethos of like, well, let's ask them, let's
Like live and let.
let live.
Which is
Whereas
why I
here,
respect it. That's why I'm talking to you. I'm not going to talk to a
yeah,
If I'm talking about Marxism, Leninism, I'm literally just going to be roasting it on my own for 3 hours with some other guy that agrees with
and
me.
there are more, ideologically like I'm pretty ideologically loose. I just I adhere to anarchism, or I agree with anarchism the most because it is the most the thing that most aligns with like what I believe,
Mhm.
like, you know, the non-combatant principle, or the whatever,
The
the
non-aggression principle.
non-aggression principle, anti-violence, like, I'll give a good example of like the difference between liberalism and this, where like why I'm not, a liberal or
Mhm.
whatever. Liberals have they think that everybody should kind of live and let live and whatever, and like we should be nice to people, and that's great. But then you ask them like, what should we do about the border? And they're like, we'll close it up. And then anarchists will be like, well, that causes a lot of strife, that causes a lot of problems and violence and stuff. And they're like, well, we can't just allow anybody in here.
I mean, I feel like even anarchists would agree if the script was flipped and there were a bunch of fascists that wanted to enter your anarchist commune, then all of a sudden you'd be
Well,
putting the walls up.
okay, so that's a really good point.
Mhm.
But there is also the idea of not tolerating intolerance,
Mhm.
because if you tolerate intolerance, then the intolerant will continually push the boundary
Mhm.
until they have the ability to take control, or are just intolerant of the group around it.
That's word for word what I say about Islam.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
so we got that
I
straight.
don't know. I don't know what you say about I'm not sure if I
Well,
agree, but
literally that. It's like you can't talk because Islam, and I guess you could say any Abrahamic faith that really believes its holy book.
yeah.
Because Christianity has
Well,
largely had its fangs pulled out. Christianity, I mean, maybe there is in the South that I'm not aware of, but globally speaking,
well, I wouldn't necessarily say that about like religion. I would say that about the states that are more religiously focused, like Israel. Like,
true. Jewish supremacy, those are all
yeah,
Abrahamic religions, by the way.
yeah,
Judaism, Christianity, to me, from my point of view, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are like the same thing with like minor differences. The same way, like, yeah,
yeah,
like,
yeah, they're spelled differently. So,
yeah,
um,
exactly.
but so what I'm saying is like, yeah, similarly with any political
Mhm.
ideology, to similar to religions, there's a broad spectrum of people that adhere to it a lot, adhere
Mhm.
to it a little, are a little bit more open, a little bit less open.
Mhm.
But what I'm saying is, if you allow people who are intolerant into your group, then that they're going to keep pushing the boundary, keep not tolerating different groups.
Mhm.
And so if that is the one thing that you can't tolerate, is intolerance,
Mhm.
or else it will, you know, grow into the Republican Party, grow into and for the three listeners out there, I'm not
Mhm.
comparing the Republican Party to the Nazis, but it will grow into the Nazis. It'll grow into Stalinist Russia, Leninist Russia, whatever. Like, and I'm comparing the Republicans to the Stalinist Russia, by the way.
The MAGA communist.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
ma
See,
that's a thing, right?
yeah, yeah. No, so
So,
it's, that's what I was kind of talking about, the like wealth being able to influence politics,
yeah.
to be able to, because that's a thing in as much as it was talked about by people who are like, influencers. It may have been like, yeah, a couple people, but I believe it was like Benny Johnson or whatever that was like, yeah, there's the red and brown alliance. And it's like, not really.
Yeah, I don't know what that. I just know there's this like goober named Jackson Hinkle on
Mm,
Twitter, and he's just
that's
like,
who it was then.
yeah, he's just always post. I thought he was a troll because of the nonsense he's
Yeah, yeah.
posting, but it turns out
And
he's associated with the Chinese Communist Party. I actually think it's a CCP psyop to just like brain rot American politics. Like
well,
that's
that's
what I
another
think it
thing
is.
we all
Yeah,
have to be worried about now
yeah.
too, is the fucking psyops, the
Mhm.
Russian, Chinese, whatever, trying to disrupt America. But like, but like, fuck it, whatever. There's bigger problems, like, you know, to apply the fill in problems with whatever you think is the problem. From the last like hour of me talking, fill in what you think I might mean. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, is there any
I'm
other?
actually surprised of how much like we were able to agree, mostly because you're not like a dogmatic like
That's the
ideologue,
cool part
because
about
you
anarchism.
acknowledged all the flaws in it. No, because I've talked to other anarchists who have this like religious dogmatic. They're like, no, our system needs to be across the whole world. Everyone needs to be in this anarchist and like.
That's fine.
But that is ironically like an anarchist totalitarianism, and that's like that's just a,
That's just fun.
yeah,
That's just a fun bit of math there.
yeah, and it's like but because you're willing to acknowledge historical reality and like the flaws in the ideology and like potential obstacles and like how cooperation between different groups that don't agree with each other can be reached, and that doesn't mean one group taking domination over the other or our system completely
Yeah.
superseding everyone else's, but an actual coexistence and a balance of power and an equality of what was it? I used this term in my project. It was like a balance of force instead of a monopoly of force,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
the state has a monopoly and instead you can have an equilibrium. And so we agreed on a lot. And the only criticism I would have is like, I just feel like these beautiful sounding ideas will be used to lure in
yeah.
well-meaning people, and then Marxist Leninist Bolsheviks are just going to take that shit over and kill everyone.
Yeah,
That's what I think is going to happen.
and that has happened historically,
Yeah.
but one of the things that we didn't really necessarily that we didn't touch on that I
Mhm.
kind of wanted to, but
Mhm.
we'll just really briefly
Yeah, sure.
now is education. Anarchists are very much like I mentioned whatever
Mhm.
10 different books of
Mhm.
this thing, and I really encourage you to read them as anarchists would encourage you to read them. Like how a lot of anarchists get together are reading club, like book club,
Mhm.
aside from, food not bombs and all that other
Mhm.
things. It's education is the antidote to being manipulated. And so please, look any of the books that I mentioned, and I'll try to listen to this and compile a list, or he might, or whatever, but please just fucking read.
It's very hard these days,
Yeah.
the Instagram reel Peter Griffin AI brain rot is
Yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
alluring. But yeah, I mean, I fully agree with you. I would say it's a bit optimistic to assume that once people get educated, they will come into alignment with
Yeah,
your
and you
ideas.
can educate
Yeah.
yourself in a completely wrong way
Yeah.
too. So I don't know,
I
but
mean, the Nazis were like what they
they
were,
read books. So
but they were the Nazi like high command was very educated. They were
yeah, yeah.
very like,
Well, you can't do what they were doing without having that
yeah.
knowledge of how people work.
Exactly. And that's why
So
like intelligence should not be conflated with
yeah,
moral righteousness, because you can be very intelligent and be a fucking evil person like Hitler.
what you were saying,
Mhm.
like balance of force,
Mhm.
balance of education,
Mhm.
balance. That's what the
Ba-
anarchists balance is what anarchists are looking for. Just balance. Like with the
you're
fucking
sounding like the Buddha right
I'm
now.
not wearing the right shirt, but
You're sounding like
uh
the Buddha. You're
yeah.
about to start meditating. But one more thing before you go. Have you seen the Chobani Solar Punk commercial?
Yes.
Yeah, that
I would, hey, fuck it.
dude, like I'll edit that. I'll put that whole
Mhm.
commercial in here. You've already seen it. That's great.
Yeah.
I want that world.
So
I don't care what
that's solar
system.
punk.
Yeah.
In one of the episodes of It Could Happen Here, I believe his name is Andrew something. Uh,
Andrewism,
yeah,
right?
Andrew Ism.
Yeah.
He has a video about it that's really good that kind
Hmm.
of connects it to anarchism, solar punk, and things like
Hmm.
that.
I've seen that one, yeah.
Yeah, and then he talks about it again on It Could Happen Here. I try to listen to his episodes, but and if this ever gets to you, Andrew, great ideas. Love you so much, but you talk way too slow.
I think Andrew's too pure for this world, man. He just thinks
Oh yeah, he's
way
great.
too he thinks way too highly of the average person.
I do too, but
Yeah. But like
that's
okay.
just by virtue of me meeting so many great
Mhm.
people.
Yeah, well, we're blessed. We
Yeah,
really are. Well, I'm glad you saw it. I was gonna have you react to it, but you already saw it.
yeah, yeah.
So,
It's very fun.
mm,
I like the idea, and I hope that one day we can get there. But like I was saying about the democratic distribution of goods,
mhm.
we can't really get there if we continue to allow a top or a bottom up distribution of wealth.
But I disagree because the plot twist of that advertisement.
It's all owned by Chobani.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's a techno feudalist
Well,
Chobani
what's
sovereign
happening
corporation.
outside of that commune that we see?
Maybe
Is
the
this like a road world, or whatever his name, the Australian fucking, you know what I'm talking about?
not really.
the Australian road movies that
Like Mad Max?
that's it.
Oh,
Is this
what?
a Mad
How do you
Max
not know
commie?
Mad
I'm
Max?
I,
Australian, that did not register.
I've been talking for however long I've been talking, and I've
I
started
didn't
to
know
get
it took
dinner
place
time.
in Australia. I
Yeah,
thought it was in America.
yeah.
What the
They're all
fuck?
speaking. They're all speaking Australian.
I just assumed that in the apocalypse, everyone
Everyone just
speaks with an
well, no,
Australian
my
accent.
favorite theory is that Fallout happened in America, and Mad Max happened in Australia,
Hmm.
and China's just doing fine.
It's a possibility.
Yeah.
I've never seen a Chinese apocalypse movie,
Well, no,
so
because they're never going.
yeah, they're like the oldest civilization in history. But
Yeah.
with that being said, I just want to close this off by saying, like, I'm not opposed or in favor of any dogmatic ideology. If you can bring results, if you can bring about a better tomorrow, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm very suspicious of people who promise the world and bring destruction, and that's what makes me kind of antithetical to Marxist ideologies, but if you can bring a better tomorrow, I'm with you. If that's techno-feudalism, if it's anarchism, if it's communism, I just want to see results and I want to see humanity developing and reaching the stars. That's my
Well,
ideology.
and I would just say bring a better, like, it depends on what you mean by bringing a better tomorrow. Bringing a better tomorrow for everybody or your neighbors,
Just humanity in
Yeah.
general. And I guess that's a good question on how you quantify it. For me, a victory for one human is a victory for all.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people will be disagreeing with that. But like, if I see, even if I'm not the guy in the spaceship, when I see a human going to space, I feel a sense of pride for all humanity.
It
I
is
feel,
fucking
yeah.
incredible. I just would never go there. It seems like a horrible. Read a City on Mars.
I'm well aware of all the radiate, but like, once we get luxury spaceships with radiation shielding
Yeah,
and all that,
luxury. What is the word? Luxury gay space communism or whatever.
I've seen something like
Yeah.
something along those
There's a
lines.
book. I think that's somewhere around the title of the book. I don't know. I
Yeah,
haven't read
but
it.
I
That's
say
one of the books I haven't read.
I say let 1,000 flowers bloom.
Mhm.
And unlike Mao, don't cut them down once they grow a little higher. But with that being said, thank you so much for
Yeah.
coming through. This was a great
Thanks
talk.
for inviting me. This
Of
was cool.
course. Yeah, this was awesome. Have a blessed day, people.